I see. So how do you feel about all this? What's going
I
on?
think it's a bunch of crap. I think all the ones that are involved in it ought to go to penitentiary. That's what I think. They killed that woman. Took her on the beach. It's terrible. It's terrible. But the Bible said there would be days like that. And here they are.
So, what's the woman's name? What's the woman's name again?
Mrs. Meyer. Her last name is Meyer too, and it's M-E-Y-E-R, where I.
And they raided her house, you're saying?
Took her cell phone, everything she had, they took it. She got so, I think she got so depressed, I don't know, but my opinion is she got depressed.
Did she die?
She died.
This last weekend? She died this last weekend? Or when she...
They raided on Saturday, and then, what was it? Either Friday or Saturday, they raided. The next day she died.
Natural causes?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I'm thinking she either had a heart attack or a stroke from all the stress. Because they's after her son, and they raided her house thinking stuff was in there. I don't know if there was or not. I don't know. I know it's a bunch of bull crap. It's terrible. She was a nice lady, real nice lady.
And how long have you lived here?
In Marion,
Yeah.
well, I was born and raised in this community
I see.
all my life. Yeah. And they come up with stuff like this. Well, they ought to be run out of town on a rail. You get to the county line, just keep pushing them.
And who are they?
The mayor, chief of police, all of them, they're all in cahoots. It's a little clan they have. If you ain't in the clan, you don't fit here. That's when it's clannish.
I see.
That's what they are, a bunch of clannish people. I like that lady. It's just terrible what they done. And people believe it. I've caught them in so many lies. At city meetings, I've caught them in so many lies, it's pathetic. About 15 years ago, me and my wife, we had a business here in town, a little hamburger joint on the end of town there. And she's ready to go. There was a guy standing out back, and I was a truck driver, and I was 500 miles from home. Gee, there's a guy standing out there, what do I do? I said, call the police. Well, she did. You know what? I'm still waiting. He was chief of police, or mayor was chief of police at that time. And I'm still waiting for him to show up. Yeah. Yeah. Now he wants to be the big shot. He ain't nothing but a liar and a womanizer.
What's the mayor's name?
Can't even think. Getting old and getting forgetful.
I know, again. That's okay. We can look it up.
Yeah, look at that.
Well, thank you for that. That was great.
Like 15 years.
That's exactly it. Start over.
Go
Go.
ahead.
Hit it.
I'm Eric Meyer, E-R-I-C-M-E-Y-E-R. I'm the editor and publisher of the Marion County Record.
So what's going on? What happened?
The proximate cause is last Friday, a little bit before 11 o'clock. A group of police officers and sheriff's deputies showed up at the back door of our business, which is kind of odd, and came in and took everybody and made them leave and read them the rights and seized the reporters, the 3 different computer terminals and computers and our file server and the backups of that file server. They also took 2 reporters' cell phones. They were at my house that my mother and I shared, simultaneous raid. You know, one of those simultaneous raids like they do for the drug cartels. They were at my house, my mother's house, and they seized her computer, my laptop computer, my personal cell phone, and simultaneously they were at Vice Mayor Ruth Herbal's house, seized her computer and her cell phone. They would not tell us when they were coming back with these. They took a long time doing it. My mother waited for seemingly several hours before they were done with her house. It frustrated the living daylights out of her, as might be imagined, an 88-year-old woman. She'd moved to that house a day before I was born. Was her only child, and I'm 69. I'll be 70 later this month. So she's lived there for almost 70 years, and she just, why are these officers standing here watching me? They're watching every move like I'm some common criminal. Then they went and seized the documents. They seized one document and took the computer away, left a mess on the floor, but of computer wiring. But she also said that they rifled through a bunch of papers on a table there that contained my personal financial data, and they photographed that. I don't know why they did that, but frankly, if there's an identity theft, that's a bigger identity theft than anything we were ever accused of. What it turns out we were accused of is that about a week and a half before this, the restaurant owner had us.
What restaurant?
Carrie's Kitchen, and she also owns the restaurant in the historic Elgin Hotel. The Carrie's Kitchen's a coffee house across the street. There was a meeting, a public forum for U.S. Representative Jake LaTurner, who represents this area, and we had been invited to it by his staff, and I and a reporter showed up down there, and the police chief threw us out on the instructions of Carrie Newell. The congressman later apologized. Now, personally, if I were the congressman, I wouldn't have gone into a meeting that they'd said the press was thrown out of. But the congressman apologized, came down here, talked to us for an hour. We thought everything was fine. Then we wrote about it the next day, and in response to that, a woman sent a Facebook posting to Phyllis Zorn, one of our reporters, saying, you know, that woman who threw you out, she's been driving illegally for a number of years or something to that effect. And Phyllis said, how do you know this? And she said, well, I can prove it. I used to be in law enforcement. I've got connections. And here's this document that shows it. And the document did, in fact, show that Ms. Newell had her license suspended. To get it back, she would have to put in an anti-drinking breath interlock and other things, and some other things that she went through. We questioned where she got this. She said, I've got connections. And we said, well, that's not good enough because it would be illegal for somebody in the dispatcher's office or someplace to provide this. She said, well, I got it off of a public website that's operated by the state. And so we said, well, what website? We went out to look for it, and with a lot of instruction, she gave us where the website was, and we were able to verify that, yes, that's where the document came from. We didn't make a copy of the document at that time, didn't even print it. We just verified that the copy she had sent us was actually there. We then started lurking in, trying to figure out what to do with this information, and found out from other research that apparently Carrie Newell and her husband Ryan are in the midst of a divorce, and there's an argument over who should keep the cars. And Ryan apparently has been arguing that since he has a valid driver's license and she doesn't, he should keep the cars. And we looked at ourselves and sort of said, that isn't a news story. That's squabbling between people in a divorce. But we're still kind of worried that this woman who gave it to us said the police were ignoring the fact that she'd been driving illegally. And it was also still possible that she may have gotten this document through means that weren't what she said. So because of that, we wrote a letter to the sheriff and the police chief saying exactly what I just told you. We didn't name Carrie, we didn't name the source, but we did explain all this. And we said at the end, we don't think we're not going to run anything about it. We don't think there's any criminality to it, but if you do, give us a call. We'll help you out with anything more. Crickets, no word back from them. Monday, Carrie went to the city council meeting and accused us of stealing the document, of giving it to Vice Mayor Ruth Herbel, and of Vice Mayor Ruth Herbel posting it all over Facebook. Truth of the matter is, we got the document from Facebook. Truth of the matter is, Ruth Herbel had asked us, had seen that original post questioning this, and had asked us for the document, and we said we didn't say anything to her. About 30 minutes later, she sent us a text that said, "Never mind, I got it from the person who was giving it to you." And she only shared it with one person, the city administrator, and suggested in that post, since after that we'd already made our decision not to run this, the city council agenda came out for that night, and it showed that Carrie Newell was on it asking for a liquor license, an endorsement of a liquor license that would go through the state. And Vice Mayor Herbel thought that this might be an issue for her getting a liquor license and should be investigated. Perfectly legitimate use. We reported all that in our paper Wednesday. Heard nothing more. We reported the truth. We did hear from Carrie after the meeting, but before we published it, that she acknowledged that she thought the document had come from, she said, "I'll bet my husband gave it to," and she named the person who she thought she'd given it to, and that she gave it to us. I said, I can't confirm or deny that, but I'll tell you now, it was the person that she said, and that person's name is named in some of the probable cause affidavits. So she'd guessed it. She knew what had happened. I said, we just looked at it to verify it, and we didn't plan to put anything in the paper. But if you make a big deal out of us stealing it and publishing it and all the rest of that, all the information's going to get out. I mean, you're going to get tarred with it. We were trying to actually protect your privacy. And she had a fit about that, and she misstated that discussion in a probable cause affidavit that she sent. Now, the police never talked to us. We've had a lot of journalists come in the past few days covering this story. Most of them have talked to Carrie. Most of them have talked to some other people around town. They've talked to more than one side of the story. Apparently, the police don't do that. They never spoke to us. They never talked to two sides of the story. They just waited, and they started work on Tuesday, as we have understood, and then on Thursday, without announcement, without warning, without asking for it, because if they'd asked for it, we would have given it to them. But they came in, and then they took all these machines. They took my machine. Well, it's possible I might have had something to do with it. They took Phyllis Zorn's, who's the person who looked at the thing online. They also took Deb Groover's. Deb had been sick that week. She wasn't even here. Remember that, though. There's something about Deb that we want to look back at. They took our file server. They took the machine that I used at home. Why they took Ruth's, everybody acknowledges where Ruth got the thing from and who she sent it to. There's no question about this. Why would you have a raid on it? What's the dramatics of it unless it's to intimidate? And I think that's probably the reason, was just create an intimidation factor. Create we're the police. You better mind your P's and Q's, or we're gonna roust you somehow. But there's a little more to it. Deb Groover, before the police chief arrived in June of this year, after the job was offered to him and the announcement of it was in our paper, she got called from a large number, half a dozen to a dozen, of his former co-workers, claiming that he was not qualified for the job, that there were allegations against him of sexually inappropriate behavior and some other things. We were never able to prove whether those allegations were true or false. None of the police officers would give us their names because they feared retaliation by other officers. So we didn't know whether any of this is true, but one of the things that they were united in saying was that the chief, who was coming here from Kansas City as a captain to Marion as a chief, that's kind of a big step down. And he was doing this at age 54, when 55 is the retirement age. And the rumor was he was going to be demoted from captain to sergeant and put in charge of something else. So we at least asked him, are you coming here because of an impending demotion? He did not respond to that question. He had said, if you print it, I'll sue you. So I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't know. We never did run these stories. But isn't it interesting that the reporter who had all that information on her computer was taken along with these? Isn't it also interesting that the original note that we received, the printout from Facebook that the source had given us, was sitting right here on my desk. That computer was seized. It's right in front of plain sight. The only thing about it that they wouldn't want to seize is that it showed that it was a page from Facebook that somebody had sent us, rather than something that we had downloaded ourselves. It was sitting on our desk. They didn't seize it. Didn't seize it at all. They did seize one document that was a driving record that was not a letter to her, but it was that record is available without any restriction to anybody who has a driver's license number and a date of birth of the person who's driving there. And it also contains only public record, which is, you were convicted on this date, your license was suspended. Your license was suspended 10 times over the course of time. And they did take that. There was a copy of that here and a copy of that at my house. We did obtain that. We did that when we were trying to find the other document and couldn't find it because it was a different link on that website. In fact, people who we've had investigating this after us also had the same trouble finding the other link, and we were just filling them in on how you found it. So it was a little difficult to find, and that's why we had to step through it. And the first link didn't yield the right document. All we were doing was verifying the existence of a document. Carrie told me last Monday night, that not only did she admit where it came from, she said the only two people who accessed the document were Zach Hudlin and Phyllis Zorn. Well, Zach Hudlin's a Marion police officer, and he accessed it to verify that that's where we got the information, which is the exact same reason as we accessed it. And he didn't give it out to anybody else, nor did we. So there's no identity theft. If you go through every little nuance of the law, you might have a case that we may have violated some terms, that our research was not statistical research and whatever. It's very splitting hairs. But to have a 7 police officer, 3-site raid, ridiculous. And they went into their police encrypted channels before they did it too. They were playing, Miami Vice or something. I don't know what they were playing. But it seemed to us that it might be just an attempt at intimidation, which is what Carrie was trying to do when she threw us out. She said, there are people going around high-fiving me because I'm finally standing up to the press. Well, there's a sentiment in this society. Started largely in Washington by people we probably know but won't name. That the press is evil, that they purvey fake news, and they have these horrible agendas that they're working off of. And if there's the slightest thing wrong, that everything's wrong. And it doesn't matter what the facts are, they're terrible. And let's get them, let's stick it to them. And I think that fed into this, as did existing rivalries. There's a long-standing rivalry between the mayor and the vice mayor. The mayor tried to recall the vice mayor. His petition failed. The vice mayor launched a petition drive to have overturned an ordinance that the mayor was a big sponsor of, that would have allowed the city to borrow without having elections to approve the bond issues. By 9-1 margin. I mean, it was a huge repudiation of this bill, which had been kind of concealed in a city newsletter that published, here's the legislation, and it only had section 1, and section 2 was the part that said you don't get to vote on it anymore. And they didn't bother to put that in. So there's a lot of stuff that's gone on for a long time. After that vote, the mayor, the grounds for removing the vice mayor from office was that she had violated the Open Meetings Act by sending an email simultaneously to all members of the council, which would be a violation, except for the fact that the city administrator had sent out a note saying, I don't know what he'd done, he'd taken care of something, and she hit reply all, and the full text of her message was, thanks. Now, yeah, is it technically a violation of the Open Meetings Act? Yeah, but come on, really? There's no criminal intent. Just like there's no criminal intent with us. We're trying to steal her identity. We don't want to be her. We don't want to get her money. I don't think she has any. We don't want to pretend that we're her in any way, shape, or form. And we decided not to run the story. If we were the criminals, we're the stupidest criminals in the world. We said who we are. Then we told the police what we'd done, and and got no benefit out of it because we didn't run a story. So what's the big deal? Why conduct the raid? Then why leave the paper here? Why steals the other thing? It was just to make a point. It's bullying. And maybe added on to it, we can check and see what that research on the police chief is. Or maybe it's just really incompetent police work. And then we ask for the probable cause affidavit. Now you got to file an affidavit saying, why do you believe this to be true, that you really need a search warrant? Because a search warrant is an intrusion of your Fourth Amendment rights, and so you have to justify it. It's got to be warranted. And you've got to have probable cause to warrant that extreme action of going in and seizing someone's property. We asked for it after the raid on Friday. We got a signed statement from the court. There was no such record existing in the court office. It showed up. It was filed this morning. Ruth Herbal also says that her warrant was never signed. The search warrant for her property was never signed. I haven't seen it, but she says that. That'd make it illegal too. And why? I have no idea why they needed to search her house. We knew everything that she had done. They knew everything that she had done. They had access to it. She would have, again, given it to them. And again, they never asked us. We would have given it to them too. So somebody went out trying to get us. Maybe it was just Carrie trying to get us, and the police stupidly just fell in line behind her. Or the police had their own motive for going after us, or the mayor told them all to do this. I don't know what happened. But it's a mess. And what really makes me mad, it's almost comical. It makes me mad that it sets a precedent that this can be done, because, this is not exactly, the Pentagon Papers or the Watergate Confessions, or, this is somebody, whether they had to run an ignition interlock on a vehicle and it wasn't even going to be reported. But it does set a terrible precedent for the media, for the press. And that's why a lot of people are coming back. But what really ticks me off, how dare they impose all this stunts and theatrics on a 98-year-old woman who has spent, her last day on this earth was spent under extreme stress and a feeling that what she'd worked in for 50 years, no one respected anymore. No one thought it was valuable. No one came to the defense of. Now, if my mother were alive now and could see the outpouring of support that has come from all over the nation, all over the world. I've been on London radio and TV twice in the past day, in addition to you name it in the United States. I've been on it. If she could see that, maybe she'd think, her death was justified. It accomplished something. I don't think anybody wants to die, but it would have been an accomplishment. She'd be proud of the fact that it made a difference. But when she died, it was at the low point of, my God, they've done the equivalent of raping you, invading your personal space, and they didn't need to do that. They just didn't need to do that. If they would have asked, we would have given them anything. And oh, by the way, that's what the federal law says you're supposed to do anyway with journalists, is ask, and if they think that it needs to be confidential, they can make an argument. And if you don't agree with that, then you can hold them in contempt of court. But there's a whole procedure. It's all outlined. And apparently, again, our police officers don't know this. Or they think that there's some loophole that they can get through. I think there's some waiver. One of the common things in Marion is that a lot of people in Marion government seem to think that the law doesn't apply to them. That they're able to waive the law because we are the mighty people in charge now. Well, the law is the law. We're ruled as a nation of laws. And it shouldn't be everything is legal unless somebody sues you to stop you. Because contrary to personal injury lawyers, there's the stallion lawyer will come to defend you for personal injury. There's no stallion lawyer that's going to come to defend you if you're property taxes are wrong. They're not going to take it on a contingent basis. They're not going to take it if your utility bill is wrong, or if somebody comes and seizes your property without just cause. Most people can't afford to do that. I mean, big rich people can afford to do it, but the average citizen can't afford to hire all these lawyers. So there should be an agreement as part of the social contract of society that we all try to follow the law. And that's what we were trying to do. Instead of pushing the law and waiting to see, well, I can get it done unless somebody sues me. And oh, by the way, I can make it a living hell for them to publish their newspaper this week. To the point that they've spread rumors that we're out of business because they've seized all of our stuff. We've had to, somebody in town wanted a signed statement from us that we're going to publish this week. Well, the signed statement is, if I have to take this little post-it notepad and write the news out by longhand and deliver it to everybody's doorstep in town, we're going to publish this week. Now, we're going to do a lot better than that. But we are not going to bend into that. And I think in that regard, my mother was a very stubborn person. And if something was right, it was right, and she was going to stand up for those rights and defend them at all costs. I think she'd be proud of that. So, to an extent, it hasn't been it's terrible loss that I won't have her around. I can't go home and tell her any of this. I can't talk to her. I can't, and I'm an only child. And it's basically, her husband died. My father died 20 years ago almost. So it's sort of, we're alone. But her spirit continues, and I think she'd be proud of that.
What was her name?
Joanne. It's spelled Joan, but she always pronounced it Joanne.
And one other question that came to mind was, did they come in with guns drawn?
Not to my knowledge. Maybe they went to the back door because we have one of those no guns signs on our front door. I don't know. No, I don't think anybody drew their guns. And some of the officers were just there doing their. In fact, one of the officers is her next door neighbor, and he was very pleasant through it all, but kept saying, I'm just doing what I'm told to do. He was a sheriff's deputy. But it is interesting that the person who was the interim chief of police did not participate in the raid. They called in a part-timer to work extra so that they had enough officers, but the interim police chief did not participate. He, by the way, has resigned from the police department, and his last day is this week, and I believe he's notified the sheriff city, that he's just going to take those last 3 days of sick time, because he doesn't want to be part of any of this. He's going to go over to Hillsborough and be a police officer in Hillsborough. It does relate to money. He's getting paid more money over there. But I think, and he's not going to tell you otherwise, because he's a very loyal person. And like a lot of people around here, they don't want to, you don't want to ever speak negative because somebody will come back and squash you. So we're kind of, as the newspaper, the movie's Pleasantville, and we're Tobey Maguire's character that's going around causing people to turn from black and white to color by exposing them to facts and truth. And the black and white people don't like it.
Well, that's really great. I think you covered everything. Anything else you want?
Had a lot of practice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I really enjoy it also. It's been really great. I'm a photographer, I'm not a journalist. So it's been interesting
guy. Toby Keith did it, but I'm not a big Toby Keith fan, but he did a cover of it. Yeah.
I just asked Eric about having the affidavit, and he said we can send this, it has to be done through our attorney, and he hasn't even seen it yet.
If you can make sure the CDs and you can make sure all the other ads are on the log in temporary server logs advertising, that would be nice.
I didn't know which was in here. And yeah, you need to go peek out front. online? Okay.
Do you have access to that temporary center on there? Yeah, I do. How do you get?
Okay, so it's $34.99 a year.
It says temporary server right here. Oh.
It's ready. I'm ready for your card number.
You should ads and go to, you know, in addition.
That's fine.